All right, hey friends, I'm excited today. I have Peter Greer. He's the president and CEO of Hope International, which is a not-for-profit that we've supported for a while and that we really, really love. And basically, they're a global not-profit, Christian not-profit that really equips underserved communities with financial tools. And so this is microfinance and saving stuff, and really to try to break the cycle of poverty. And so that's one piece of Peter, but there's another piece of him, which is really a lot of what we're going to talk about today, which he wrote this awesome book called Lead with Prayer, okay? And he's co-authored a whole bunch of books. This one deeply impacted me in a really significant way, and so I'm excited to kind of unpack some of that and share some of these lessons that I learned from this book because they have really, really impacted me in our business, and I hope they do the same for you. So real quick, before I bring Peter on though, I just want to say I would encourage you to just run out and buy this book. I'll just leave it that. This is a book that I cannot recommend highly enough. It has been a game changer for us, and we'll get into more of the details. But suffice it to say, if you just pulled into your driveway and you're done with this podcast now, just go buy the book. We'll leave it there. But anyway, Peter, I'm excited to chat. Thanks for taking some time out of your busy schedule to come chat today.
Oh, it's great to connect, and thanks for those incredibly encouraging words and for your friendship and partnership with Hope International. So great to spend time together again.
Yeah, I'm excited to be chatting about this. And so like I've kind of alluded to with this book, I would just want to say how it's impacted our organization. I'll start there. And the book's called Lead with Prayer. And basically what you do in this book that helped me so much is I would say it's in some ways, it's like Tim Ferriss meets the prayer world or something like that. Because you analyze, you studied hundreds of Christian leaders and analyze their prayer habits so that we can see, oh, look at what Francis Chan is doing. Look at what Mark Batterson is doing in his prayer closet. And I love that so much because it's it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to do what they do, but it's really inspiring when you say, oh man, that's how they do it. That's how someone who really has that kind of walk with the Lord does things. And that's how someone with that level of organization, that's how they do things. And so that blessed me immensely, being able to kind of be a fly on the wall in all these different situations. So with all that, I would love to hear, because you did interview some of these, I'm assuming certain things stood out to you personally, where you had that same feeling of, wow, okay, all right, yeah, now I want to try to apply some of this to my life. Can you let us know, what are one or two of those things that really stood out to you?
Oh, I mean, you just captured the motivation behind the book. Is how many different leadership books have we read that talk about all the different habits of leaders? We can tell you what they do. We can tell you about their diets. We can tell you about all of their habits, and yet we didn't see anyone that had researched or written about what are the prayer habits of
Yeah.
these leaders and what can we learn from them. And similarly, we wanted to make it as practical as possible. And so at the end of each chapter, there are the very concrete prayer practices. And this was not just a book that we researched and wrote. These are prayer practices that we tried. And some of
Mhm.
them we did once, and I don't know if we're going to do them again. But many of them have just totally changed the way that we pray, the prayer habits and practices in our day to day. And a lot of it, I mean, this sounds so obvious, but how many leaders have a clear and defined plan for how they want to grow in their leadership skills and how they want to grow in their organization and but how many have ever actually put down what is the plan to grow in prayer? What are the new
Mhm.
things I'm going to try? And what do I want to do on a daily, weekly, quarterly, and annual basis? And just that level of intentionality was something that I never had in my prayer life. And yet, as we had these conversations, every single leader said, prayer matters, and it matters so much that it's going to be reflected on my schedule. It matters so much that it's not going to be when I have time. It's going to actually take a place of importance in my day, in my schedule, in my life. And then it's going to matter so much that it's not just going to be something that I do individually, but I also go on the journey collectively with others. And so I always thought of prayer as a individual practice or habit. And it has been so much fun to learn from global leaders about what it looks like to actually invite others, to go on the journey with others in that. And I could share so many stories about how my prayer life has been impacted. But, one, you asked about interviews. There's just one real quickly that stands out for me, and it was with Johnny Erickson Tata. And she was so kind to spend the time. But for me, it was, how do we deal with seemingly unanswered prayers? And she spoke very candidly about the fact that many of her prayers for healing, she was paralyzed when she was a teenager, many of her prayers for relief from pain, those have not been answered.
Yeah.
But she experienced something that she would say was better than those answers, and it has changed her prayer life. She said, I pray for the presence of God. I pray for comfort and courage. I pray for the ability to use this for good in the lives of others. And it totally transformed my prayer lives. We still pray for those issues. We still pray for what we're dealing with, but to also expand our prayers for God to be glorified in the midst of the pain, in the midst of the challenge, like that just opens up
Yeah.
our prayers and our hearts in a dramatically different and very significant way. But I could go on, but that was one moment that I'll never forget.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so good. Yeah. Cause that is one of those hard, that is one of the harder things, I think, of being a Christian following Jesus and praying and just not seeing the answer. And especially something so significant and challenging like that, like those situations. And yeah, so that's really, really rich. And yeah, I mean, answering that question for me a little bit, like just looking back to some super practical things that I took from this book. And I think the deepest thing for me was that like we're believing God, we're praying for some really big things that we do not have the ability to pull off. Like I'm not smart enough, our team is not smart enough, we're not big enough, we're not well resourced enough. We just don't have it, And so we can either just attempt to do things in our own strength and just kind of feebly keep going and, going through the routines. And it's like, all right, maybe we'll make it to the end and survive and be able to pay our bills or whatever. But it's like, I just want so much more. And that is the God who we serve, who wants to do the Ephesians 3:20 thing so much bigger than we can even imagine, and so for me, that was just really, really helpful. Just the reminder of, if you really want to do what God has called you to do, like the key to that isn't by working smarter and by whatever, reading all Tim Ferriss's books or 100 of the best business books but it's prayer. It's by praying. And it's like, it's such an aha. It's such a, like, or it shouldn't be. This should be everyday normal Christianity. But somehow we've lost sight of this, because I would say that we've always been an organization that prays. Prayer has always been important to me, but you just helped me notch it up 5 notches. And I'm so grateful and thankful for that. And so organizationally for us, like we began, we prayed before meetings occasionally, but like we're becoming so much more consistent with that. We decided we're going to create a weekly prayer meeting. I told all of our employees that you have 10% of your working hours you can devote to prayer on the clock. And so like we're just prioritizing it in ways that we never had before. And I'm thrilled to report back to you over the next couple of years, like what happens as a result of that, because I have no doubt, and we've already seen some little things of God showing up in ways that, yeah. And so I can't wait to report back to you on all this. But
I
anyway,
can't wait to have that conversation. I love that. Yeah.
yeah.
And I would just
So
say our experience personally and organization, we're on the same journey and absolutely, absolutely thankful for already what we see.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, so I feel like I'm gushing over here because the book just really impacted me in such a deep way. I read it alongside Tyler Stanton's Praying Like Fools book, and the two just, God just hit me at the right time with them. And when you read a right book at the right time, okay, it's just a big, big thing. So, all right, I want to just kind of dive into the weeds a little bit on some of this stuff here. So, all right, you talk to a lot of different leaders here, and I'm curious about identifying correlations between a leader's prayer life and their ability to handle stress and make good decisions. Like, did you guys identify anything along those lines? Because obviously, so many leaders are stressed out, and I'm curious if there was any like trickle down effect of that. Did you notice anything like that?
There are research studies that I can share and cite that talk about absolutely there is less stress from leaders and organizations that make time and space for prayer. That shouldn't really surprise us, but it is true. It happens. And on a very real way, maybe to take an example in the extreme to your other point, is how many of the most significant, regrettable decisions that you and I make
Mm,
in life would have been different if we had paused for 24 hours and spent time, as Terry Looper says, getting our heart neutral, getting at a position where we truly want the Lord's will more than our own. How many of those decisions would have been different? And I can tell you in my own life, there would have been a lot. And isn't it interesting when we read through Scripture to realize how many times the word rush or quick to are associated not with wisdom, but are associated with regrettable decisions. And I just love the habit and practice of saying, we're going to slow down. We're going to spend time to listen first. And
yeah.
I know that will cause us to make much better decisions and to believe that God is still speaking, that God does still want us to come before. And there is wisdom. His thoughts are not my thoughts. There is a
Hmm.
higher level of wisdom if we slow down enough to listen, to consult, and to ask that the Lord would guide us. And I believe that that is true, not past tense, but present tense.
Yeah. Yeah. So that reminds me, I was having a conversation with a friend last week, actually, and he was talking about this topic, basically hearing from God and making good decisions as a result. And one of the things he said is he went through, I guess, the Psalms and looked for all the instances where he looked for two phrases. One of them was, I thought to myself, and the other one was David or whoever inquired of the Lord, and then followed up. And he said it's just such a stark difference between I thought to myself and then did X, Y, or Z, and then the ramifications of that versus I inquired of the Lord and then looked at what happened downstream. And so it's one of those things that is so obvious and yet, so easily missed. But something that, for me, I've just been shaking myself this year, just really trying to stir myself up and just make this as regular of a part of my life as possible and make this my new normal baseline from which everything else grows. Because it's just such an integral part. Again, like I'm preaching to the choir, you know all this, but I'm saying this for anybody listening. If you're like I was last year, like you might be praying, that might be part of your life, but there is more. There is a higher level, and your life is only going to improve in terms of your effectiveness by increasing your prayer life. So, okay, I want to talk a little bit about innovation and how this ties in, because again, like in some ways this is kind of repeating, but I like hearing from you some of these specific data points, like if you have any. Like did you observe anything in terms of leaders being more innovative and generating more and better ideas as a direct result of their prayer lives?
Mm. Yeah. You know, when you talk about innovation, my thought first went to the innovation in the prayer practices themselves.
Mm.
And we were blown away, similar to your friend, kind of reading through scripture and paying attention to. Do you know how many different postures there are when it talks about praying? Do you know how many have different approaches there are? Like, there is so much more to explore. And it's really interesting that when the disciples were with Jesus, that the one thing that we have recorded that they asked Jesus to teach them was not how to do some miracle, not how to preach some sermon. The one thing that we have recorded is the disciple came to Jesus and said, Lord, teach us how to pray. Like they saw that there
Yeah.
was a different way. And that really was the posture that we went through this whole deal was, Lord, teach us how to pray, and then to listen to global leaders. And it was amazing to realize there's just so much more there to explore. Again, postures. I never did anything other than fold my hands and bow my head. There is so much more to actually pray with your eyes open, looking at nature, and to
Yeah.
realize that can enhance our prayer life. You ever been at night and prayed looking up at the stars? That will
Hmm.
change that prayer time significantly when you remember the greatness of God. You ever prayed on your knees with your hands saying, Lord, I'm in trouble, help on that. And so the physical posture, the different approaches, the way that we just had our mind was blown with a broader set of tools and approaches that were very helpful in allowing us to experience a wider, breadth of practice
Yeah,
in the way that we pray that was really, really meaningful.
I love that. So, uh, take someone who's listening to this right now, and whether they run their own company or whether they're working in a company, and they would love to bring more prayer into their organization. Like, what do you suggest for someone?
Yeah, and in some ways, people could say, well, Peter, you work for a Christ centered nonprofit organization doing poverty alleviation. Of course, you can pray on the clock. Similar for you, 10% of your time. That would
Yeah.
never work for me. And I am so disappointed. We had two stories of Fortune 100 leaders that have created vibrant prayer cultures. Both of them, their legal teams would not give the final sign off that was necessary to include their story in the book. And I was so disappointed in that because
Really?
they absolutely stretched the bounds. So I think that would be the first thing that I would say is if you say it won't work here, I can give you some examples. I can't tell you who they are, but I can give you some examples that absolutely stretch the bounds of what might be possible. And yes, it needs to be done a little bit differently. Perhaps it is over the lunch hour in a different place than the public way that we pray at Hope International, but it is absolutely possible to gathers. And the benefit's the same. The benefit, whether it is a Christ-centered organization or in the broader marketplace, the benefit is absolutely the same. So I guess that's the first thing I'd say is it is possible to grow in creating a prayer culture wherever it is that you work. It might just require a little more creativity. Second thing that I would say is it will help you have less stress, make better decisions, have more alignment with your mission, and you will see God show up in surprising ways. That is what we have heard too many times to believe it is just the tangential or it is amazing to hear all of these stories. And after the book came out, it's been so encouraging to hear more and more stories of people that have actually done the work to prioritize prayer individually and in their place of work, and to realize, just there's all kinds of benefits. So I guess that's the last thing I would say is try it. Like just try it. Try it for the next 40
Yeah.
days. Try it.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about I remember my mom who worked in a corporate environment and secular company, and I remember her years ago, probably 20 years ago. She said that she started going in before every meeting. She would get there early and just pray in the conference room for 10 or 15 minutes before the meeting. And she told me this one specific instance where it was going to be this super high tension meeting and it was going to be all this conflict. And she and this other guy, another believer in the company, they both went in and prayed for about 10 minutes beforehand. And she said the meeting, like she could not believe the way that the two volatile, super conflicting people like just behaved. It was like completely different. And she said the whole meeting, like, and she said once she experienced that, she's like, I'll never not do it anymore. And so like that's just something on a little level that anyone can do, you know? And I think there's so many opportunities here like this. And as you were talking, Peter, I was just thinking about this. Never really thought about this before, but Joseph in Egypt and how, you know, how blessed Egypt was because of Joseph, you know? And I wonder what his prayer life was like. I wonder what part that played into it. You know what I mean? Like, what was he praying?
Mm.
I don't know. It'd just be really interesting to kind of,
Right.
I wish we knew some more about that and how
Well, we
many other
don't know
times,
yet.
you know?
Right, right. I mean, it is interesting, similar level of influence, and we do get some insights into the prayer life. Daniel, he was
Hmm.
in a very secular environment,
Yeah.
whatever the company is where your mom worked. My guess is he was in an even more
Yeah,
hostile place,
for
and
sure.
he made a way to say this matters. And I absolutely believe that his decision making, well, we know this,
Yeah.
was different as a result.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, all right. Well, I want to switch a little bit and talk about hope. And part of it, I'm a big fan of encouraging people to move forward in what God has called them to do. I think there's too many Christians who are bound up in fear, and I'm speaking because I was one, and I had to wrestle through a lot of the fears and doubts and insecurities and everything else of kind of stepping out to follow the path that God had for me. And so, anyway, in terms of Hope International, now this really big, super successful not for profit that's making such an impact on the world, like it's easy to look at that and just think that it always was. But can you tell me about the origin story of this?
Yeah. I'm smiling even at that description of that. It is a question of, yeah, we are amazed at what God has done, and let there be no ambiguity at who gets the credit for anything good that happens through this organization. But yeah, it was founded by Jeff Rutt, and I just have so much respect for him. Home builder and dairy farmer, and was with his church actively involved in responding after the fall of the Soviet Union in the mid 90s, and was sending over food and supplies from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And on one of these trips, Pastor Petrenko in Zaporizhia, Ukraine, essentially said, "Your help isn't helping us anymore. There's dependency, and it's
Hmm.
having some ways that are not actually causing health and our church and our region to flourish." And he said,
Wow.
"Isn't there a way for you to help us help ourselves?" And that really was the founding of Hope International. And what they discovered in that community is what we just discovered all around the world is God has given incredible gifts, incredible abilities. But if you are born in a rural part of Burundi and you are living in financial poverty, it's not like there's a long line of people that are ready to invest in your idea, in your entrepreneurial adventures, even though you might have incredible gifts and abilities. And
Yeah.
so around the world, we bring the hope of Christ in small groups, and then we also, in a discipleship-based model, and then we also encourage these individuals. They start saving together and start investing in each other's businesses together. And it really is an effective way to break the cycle of generational poverty by helping people create jobs as they grow in their relationship with Christ. So it's a powerful tool. Partners with the local church locally. And just to your point, I mean, yeah, it was designed to be a small ministry helping one church in Ukraine, and now it has grown. We're in 27 countries. We have about 1,500 full-time employees, and we just passed our 3 millionth person that we were able to serve around the world,
Amazing.
and it has been an incredible story. But again, full circle, may we never forget. This is a story of what God is doing around the world, and it has been an absolute gift, yeah, to just have a
Yeah.
front row seat to watch.
Yeah. And I just love that because I think so often when God does something and he puts his hand on something and you watch the growth happen, it's easy to get a couple years down the line and just see something so big and forget that it started out of an act of obedience that
Mm.
was small and seemingly insignificant. It was just a little seed, like you're just helping that one church there. And then following that direction that came through that organization saying, hey, why don't we tweak some things, do them slightly different? Like that was the thing that just opened up the door, which, coincidentally is something that has attracted me to you guys and your organization so much because once you read When Helping Hurts or you watch Poverty Inc., that documentary, like you start to see, oh, wow, okay, I don't want to be hurting. I don't want to just be throwing money and not actually be helping solve the problem, in which I think it's easy to sit in America and feel good just writing a check and just, yep, I feel good, I'm done. But I love that you guys are so focused on actually doing something that is going to help and enrich that community and those individuals and not create a cycle, that people can't get out of. And so what has that been like scaling that? I'll say that.
Yeah, no, and well said. You just articulated the heart of who we are. And so many of those approaches, we want to do good, but then we realize, oh, it's complicated. Sometimes it hurts. But unintentionally, that can create an attitude of, well, I'm just going to be apathetic. I'm just going to disconnect. And that's not loving. So the question is, how do we have meaningful action? And that's where not just Hope International, but I think there are some fundamentally different ways of looking at the problem of poverty and the way that we all respond. And one is, are we doing things for someone else or with? And
Mhm.
anytime we have a for, we're going to have ill-fitting solutions that we're going to propose? And the second question, is it us going in, or is it us finding individuals in local churches that are already there with a relationship and community, and us partnering with them, equipping them, serving them as they serve in their communities? And so there's some like fundamental questions of approach that I think are really, really important. And then I think the growth has come, I think, for two things. One, there's no question, like, we want to do this in such a way that Christ is at the center. And there was a lot of opportunity to be pulled off mission. And I think we just have said, no, this is who we are. Growth is not our primary goal. Staying faithful to what God has called us is. So let's do that. And then the second piece is, let's operate with excellence. And so instead of having scattershot, we said, let's try to do a small number of things and try to do them the very best that we can. And so that, knowing who we are, knowing our mission, trying to do our work with excellence, we have not pursued growth, but the growth has come, I think, because we've known who we are, stayed on mission, and tried to do the services to the very best of our ability. And it really has been an amazing story. So super grateful for all the friends that have partnered with us, but most importantly, extremely grateful. This works because of the God-given gifts and abilities that are already in these communities. We just have the ability to unlock some things that have been trapped in partnership with our global team. So that's really the ones. I love telling the stories of the people that we partner with, the entrepreneurs that we're able to invest in, and what they are doing in their communities to love their neighbor and build their church and have this tremendous impact. So those are the stories that we love to tell most.
That's awesome. I love that so much. Well, I'm going to let you go. I appreciate you taking all this time to chat. And so for anybody listening, again, I highly encourage you to get the book, Lead with Prayer. You can just go to leadwithprayer.com. They have a bunch of free resources on there as well. And then also check out hopeinternational.org. Again, organization that is near and dear to our heart that we've supported for years now, and just doing really, really good work. So anyway, Peter, thank you so much for taking the time today.
This has been so much fun. Thank you.
I'm only on page 13 and I've already underlined a zillion things and I want to cry in a good way. This is what Kelly said after reading our book, Simple Money, Rich Life.
Yeah. Well, those first 13 pages, I mean, they're going to do it to you. They're going to do it to you. So be sure to check out the first 13 pages.
And did you know that you can get a copy of this award-winning book for free? You can get it on Amazon, but we so believe that the church needs this message that if you can cover shipping, we'd love to cover the cost of the book and send you a free copy.
All you need to do is go to seedtime.com/free to get yours.